Good evening and welcome to Inside the Rookery, Season 11, Episode 3. Today we are joined by Ryan Arey to talk about mandate versus Muse, myth versus market, and whether the modern franchise machine leaves any room for soul. Welcome to the stream, Ryan. It's a pleasure to have you.
I am so happy to be here. These sound like really heady topics. You know what we do on our show, right? Like
Yes.
we
Yeah,
talk about like cape flicks and funny books and space wizards. So hopefully I can contribute something, but the show is a lot smarter than me, so I'll do my best.
Well, we've got
thanks for having me on.
No problem. We've got loads of questions, as always, pre-submitted by our Patreons on Discord. But as always, if you have any extra questions or comments, pop them in the chat like this, and I will bring them up on screen for us to read and answer. Hopefully, we'll have some fun questions as well as some serious ones. Andy, you may need to jump in with your nerdcore chat. Okay, let's get into it. So here's one from Zoltan, a regular in the questions comments field. Do you think large cinematic universes allow for genuine artistic voices, or are they inherently corporate storytelling machines?
Well, can't they be both? I mean, really... Yeah. Luckily at this point, we have a few cinematic universes we can look at, like as case studies. I do know one thing, and that is like when you start off saying, we're going to do a cinematic universe, it doesn't really work because you have to concentrate on one movie or show at a time. I'm looking at Dark Universe. I'm looking at the Amazing Spider-Verse and why those kind of failed because they were too focused on the future and not on the present. The Marvel Cinematic Universe at its best was focusing on character first because we needed to relate to these people and care about these people. And I think at a certain point, corporate mandates stepped in and said, we need more, more, more. Honestly, if you want to look at the right way to handle a cinematic universe, except for a few hiccups over the past few years and some pretty big mistakes, it's Star Wars. Because Star Wars, in its really high profile moments, like the sequel trilogy, severely dropped the ball because of corporate pressure. But when it came to things like the High Republic series, all they did was get a bunch of great creators together and empower them to make something new that we had never seen before. So I think you can take an example of good and bad in corporations owning this.
Yeah, I think Star Wars is a great example because it's also got such a breadth of different things. So if one thing's not for you, you'll maybe find something else that is for you. If you're not a big fan of like a particular character like the Mandalorian, although why wouldn't you be? I love him. Like you'll find something else that you can watch in another, not just in another series, but in another media, in animation, in film, in TV series.
Yeah, I was having that exact chat with, we've got the Moss Isley Canteen, a little Star Wars club that we run in school on Friday lunchtimes. And we were chatting, we initially watched the kind of Mandalorian and Grogu trailer, but then we moved on to talking about Marvel. And I was attempting to kind of rehabilitate She-Hulk's reputation because a few of them really, really didn't like it. And I was like, but you know, it's okay for you not to like it. Not everything needs to be for you. And this was a mind-blowing concept for these 13-year-olds. But yeah. Well,
my buddy Adam Lance Garcia, huge Star Wars writer, likes to say that Star Wars is a restaurant. You know, order what you want off the menu. And especially like, you know, Lindsay, you just said this, when you're talking about different medium or different media that they use. I mean, the Star Wars comics are some of the best, Star Wars stories out there.
I once found in a little secondhand bookshop in Edinburgh the original like script in a book form, and that was really weird to read.
Yeah.
Especially because it's got a deleted scene at the start where Luke is talking to his friends, and I didn't like it was before deleted scenes because I am so old. It was before DVDs and Blu-rays, guys. So yeah, it was like
was that the annotated Star Wars screenplays, that book?
Can't remember. It was like in the late 90s, and it just had like the screenplay for Star Wars, and I just remember it having, we've probably still got it somewhere if it wasn't destroyed in one of the great and epic floods that Andy Law and I have suffered over the years.
If you have a chance to read that annotated screenplay thing, it's really interesting because it's the first drafts, and it takes you through the first draft of New Hope is it's about Anakin Starkiller, and who's an older general, and it's completely different. But those are really interesting too. I mean, hey, like I said, it's been out there for a long time, and you can approach it from any direction you want. You can look at other things and say corporations are ruining it. I think James Gunn's also doing a great job because he's putting story and script first. We'll wait and see what happens, though. I mean, I'm curious if Netflix or Paramount buys that studio, or when they buy it, if there's any more corporate pressure to do more for, boost streaming, et cetera. Or maybe they've learned from their mistakes. After all, Lucasfilm is copying the DCU's template as far as like the president who's a creative, et cetera.
We do have a
very. Oh, sorry. I thought it was very smart of him to kind of launch it with the universe already in situ, so that it wasn't starting from nothing like with Iron Man, but like there was already, we're in a lived-in world and there are other characters out there. You may not see them right now, but they're there. I think
I guess the advantage to that is the world we live in, a world that's like saturated with superheroes. I still kind of think they should have just kept the Batman in the universe and added it onto that. But I understand why they didn't, and that's fine. But like that's sort of where my head was at. Now we're not going to get the DCU's Batman until the Batman 3 comes out, is the latest rumor, and that's just ridiculous at this point.
That's a while. Yeah. But I mean, by that point, if the issue was he was wanting to have an older Batman, by that point, well, Robert Pattinson will be old enough to play an older Batman.
He is old. He's in his 40s.
No, he's not.
He wears it well.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. He's up there. Hang on.
Yeah.
Hey, Siri, how old is Robert Pattinson?
Robert Pattinson is
39 years old. 39 years young.
Almost 40.
Yeah. There you go. He was born in the 80s.
So, do you think, Lazy Cat asks, could a major studio ever embrace true finality, or has ending the story become financially impossible?
No, never. Unless you have a franchise that is so tied to a person, which, I mean, I don't think, for instance, Mission Impossible is necessarily tied to Tom Cruise. It was a TV show first. I do think that whoever comes along in 20, 30 years, that one's going to be tough to fill because Tom Cruise has such star power associated with him. But no, I think that they could have done a Top Gun sequel without him. It probably would have flopped. But other than that, I mean, no, I was disappointed that Hugh Jackman came back. I didn't like the movie that much, Deadpool and Wolverine. And until people die, but even then you're talking about IP that have existed for decades. No, I don't think there's any kind of finality you'll ever see.
Yeah, unless you have like an individual who somehow managed to hold on to the rights to it.
Oh, Back to the Future. Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale, when they die, Universal can make more Back to the Future movies, but that's like a very rare example.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Back to the Future.
Oh my God, it's a perfect movie. Perfect movie. You have to see it. I'm not even going to oversell it. Like it's a perfect movie. You have to see it. I'll tell you a franchise, a major franchise though.
For decades, by the way. But yeah.
Well, I'll tell you a major franchise that did end and will never come back. Jaws. I don't think they'll ever make another Jaws movie. They don't need to because they have other shark movies. And the original Jaws movies had such diminishing returns with each one. I think the name is box office poison, unless Spielberg came back and did it. Same thing, like you'll never see another E.T., but that's only one movie. It doesn't count as a franchise. And I don't think they will ever make another Indiana Jones movie. I think we'll continue to see games. I hear The Great Circle is fantastic. I haven't played it yet.
Yeah, I've heard that's really good. I think maybe Indiana Jones, they might, but a long time in the future. That seems to be one that would hold enough nostalgia and talk about a historical event that just now we're quite far away from, but in the future obviously we'll be even more far away from, and people might want to revisit that.
Yeah,
we hope we'll be further away from them.
We hope we'll be further away from fascism. Yeah.
I think they went out on a high note with Dial of Destiny. I mean, that one too, I watched that movie and I'm like, I just wish he would have gotten to, spoiler alert, to ancient Greece earlier. I kind of think Indiana Jones traveling through time was a brilliant masterstroke, and there's a point when they pass through that portal where I'm like, I actually have no idea what they're going to do now. I have no, I thought I always knew what was going to happen in these movies, and I am utterly flummoxed as to what's next. So I like that feeling.
So just when you were talking there about modern day like masterpieces or classics, it did strike me that these are our modern day myths. So and do you agree with that? Do you think that like superhero movies and the stuff we're creating now, or the stuff from the golden age of comics, are our myths, or are we just recycling old myths?
That's really funny. That's such a, I say it all the time, but is it clear? Do you know superheroes are our modern myth, or Luke Skywalker's our modern myth? Because they are, but it's not because we're recycling myth. Every myth is recycled, because every myth, if you read Joseph Campbell, he talks about how myths are myths because they, every time I say myth like that, I think of the Muppet movie when the waitress comes up every time I say myth and says, yes. No, that's a myth. And then she pops up. Anyways, so every story, like there's basically just a finite number of stories that the human race always tells because they're tied to who we are and how we evolved in our civilizations. Primarily, there's two kinds of cultures that have existed in the world. There's hunter-gatherers and there's agrarian cultures. And those two different kinds of cultures, their myths are always about replacing the other. It goes back to Cain and Abel. One was a shepherd, one was a farmer. They're all like, it's all there, right up to Oklahoma, and the farmer and the cowman should be friends. It's always those two sides that are in this push-pull because those are the two types of civilizations that we can have. Why am I talking about ancient civilizations? Because those civilizations are the fundamentals of who we are and the kind of myths that we tell. When they found like perfectly preserved bodies, like that Iceman they found up in some Nordic country, they got into this guy's stomach. He was preserved from 10,000 years ago, and they found out that what he ate were grains and pork and cows and milk, like the exact same stuff we eat now. We've essentially been unchanged as a species for 100,000 or more years, or plus or more. So there are no new myths. There are no new archetypes because the archetypes that we have resonate with us and what makes us human. There are stories about coming of age because as human beings, we age. We all start as children. We all hopefully become adults and we see the passage of other adults. So when we talk about a story like Spider-Man, Spider-Man is a recycled myth. It is a coming of age story. It is a young man who is seeking out a father figure who basically is in a type of religious story because he's seeking atonement. So you can go back to the Bible and find stories of prophets who sin. King David is a great example of that. But he's always seeking out a father figure to replace Uncle Ben, but all the older men in his life are criminals. So he's always searching and he'll never be whole because adolescence means you're never whole. There's always a part of you that's missing. And even though Peter Parker's in his 30s and married, he still stays true to that core character. Superman is, of course, Hercules and the marriage between the heaven and the sky, just like Hercules. Batman is Odysseus, a man skilled in all means contending. The best of these stories always take different things and remix them. And I'm sorry if I'm going off on a rant here, but I keep saying Star Wars works best when it's familiar and new. You watch the original, there's aspects of it that are from obviously Westerns and fighter pilots and samurai films, but also medieval stories, and there's guilds like in medieval times. But when they get too specific to our time, it feels less universal, like when there's a diner in Attack of the Clones that's from the 1950s. Yeah. So yeah, we are definitely in the myth recycling era because we've never been in anything else.
Have you seen The Adjustment Bureau with Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, I think, isn't it?
I have not.
Right. Okay. So I am absolutely convinced, and nobody will dissuade me from this theory, that the Adjustment Bureau is a retelling of Aeneas and Dido of Carthage. Like even her name, like Lyssa, is like Alyssa, which is the other name that Dido had. And I am convinced it's what would have happened. The scriptwriter has decided that the Adjustment Bureau is what would have happened if Aeneas and Dido had decided to rebel against the gods and continue their love affair instead of Aeneas going on to Rome and Dido staying back. So 100% convinced that no one else in the world is, maybe one person on Reddit, but I will die on that hill.
If you want to create anything successful, it's a pretty simple formula. You take two things people already know about that don't belong together, you mash them together. You take sci-fi and kung fu, you make the Matrix, etc. So yeah, in taking Greek myth, you know, what if Romeo and Juliet would have ended up together and it's 30 years later? That sounds like it could be interesting. Yeah. Like, are their families still fighting because they didn't die? You know, like, did they have to go into exile?
Apparently it's based on a Philip K. Dick short story, in which case I firmly believe Philip K. Dick also had read the Iliad when he was at school, like I had to do, and translate it from Latin into English, and it left a mark upon him.
I think it's more likely he read it while he was off his face on LSD, knowing Philip K. Dick.
Yeah.
So, and that would
Dreaming of Electric Sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, Otzi the Iceman was found on the border between Switzerland and Italy. So
there it is. My bad. Yeah. I thought it was up in Iceland or Norway or something like that. Wow.
In the Central European Alps. I mean, they're all pretty high.
Apparently, that guy had amazing shoes too. Some cobbler took the shoes and replicated them and was like, "These are the most comfortable shoes I've ever worn. They're just leather and wood." So don't let Big Shoe fool you guys. The answer has been in our pocket for 100,000 years. Big Shoe coming for us. Somebody comes up with puts a hood on me and takes me off.
Yeah, we know. We'll know.
Yeah,
we'll know. It was Big Shoe. So Zoltan asks, is fan service a form of love or a form of fear? We've got another question about this, which we will come back to.
That's interesting. So let me throw out a couple examples. Did you guys watch? Are you Star Trek people? Do you know Star Trek very well? Okay, so you know Picard season 3. So Terry Matalas is a fan of Screencrush, and he actually invited me to the premiere and shit, and I got to meet people and stuff. I'm just name dropping that. That was really the best night of my life.
It worked.
Yeah. Well, I did. I met him at a hotel when they were doing the press junket, but this is so stupid. This is unrelated to the question. We were doing Bad Batch coverage, and I didn't realize Bad Batch was dropping 2 episodes that day. And I was in LA, and we only had prepped 1, and I was like, oh shit, I got to make this other Bad Batch episode. Who cares? Why did I do that? Because when I got to the hotel, Terry was like, dude, 5 minutes ago, and he pointed to all the empty chairs and said, Riker, LaForge, I would have been hanging out with TNG if I just would have said, you know what, we'll do the Bad Batch next week. Who cares? I will never make that mistake again. I'll never put anyways, that Picard season 3 is full of fan service, but it comes from a place of love. When Terry did that, when Terry brought back the Enterprise D, it's because, dear God, he loved the Enterprise D and he wanted to film on it, right? That was for him. I think the fan service that's a form of fear would, I hate shitting on creators. I definitely think there's a time when people go, Game of Thrones is probably a good example of a form of fear, because I think Dave and Dan in the last couple of seasons of that show were way too plugged into online culture, and they knew fan expectations, and they based too many story decisions around whether or not people had already predicted them. Lost did the same thing. So why did Arya kill the Night King? Spoiler alert for a show that ended 7 years ago. Because fans predicted that they wanted something the fans couldn't predict. It's a stupid way to tell a story. So I think that's fan service from fear.
Yeah, well, strangely enough, I think you've just answered this question. So Lorfield asked, if audiences guess twists, why do you think storytellers change their original intent? You've mentioned quite a famous one. The only other one I can think of right now is Gossip Girl being Dan, okay. not Gossip Girl, not Blake Lively's character's brother. And it was ridiculous when they did that in Gossip Girl, by the way, because it totally undermined everything the whole series was about.
And a lot of the changes, decisions made in the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones, people have the same critique. That it was betraying, maybe not even betraying George's original intent, but betraying the arcs that we had seen them on. I don't know, I'll pick on Arya again for a second. And the Hound as well. The Hound facing off with his brother, Clegane Bowl, we were all talking about it for a long time. He should not have been, his whole arc was to let go of those feelings. He should not have sought that conflict out, right? He shouldn't have been going to King's Landing to fight his brother, but he could have fought him when he was there. And I don't know, but there's things like that where what was Arya's arc? Just to get revenge? Did she not learn anything? There's certain things where they were yeah, the fans want this. The fans want that. We want to do the Dirty Dozen of north of the wall. The logistics don't matter. And yeah, I think that takes fans out of it because we feel catered to. I'll tell you what, I watched a great video the other day. Jason Pargin's one of my favorite TikTokers. And he said, they were talking about AI art and seed dance and shit like that, and how they will eventually, and I think this will happen, make their own Game of Thrones season 8, make their own Stranger Things finale. Fans will do this. And sometimes it will empower young filmmakers who otherwise couldn't have done these things, right? But for the most part, it's going to be terrible. His main point, though, was that fans don't know what they want, right? If they did, it would just be the same thing over and over, because they're just feeding off of what makes them happy, right? You want to see, you like Daenerys, so you want to see Jon and Daenerys end up together, but it's a more interesting story, for instance, if Daenerys doesn't go that way, if that makes sense. He expressed it much better than I have. It's a great TikToker. You should follow him.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you think of first season of Game of Thrones, where they're following the books, who would kill Ned Stark? I remember when I first read the books, and I was just horrified when that happened, and I was dreading watching the series because I knew it was going to, dreading in a good way, because I knew it was going to happen. My particular arc that I dislike the most in Game of Thrones is Jaime's arc. Like they spend all this time
Yeah.
rehabilitating him, like showing that he can be a better person, changing, and then he just like, no, I didn't like it. Spoiler alert, he dies under the city with his sister.
I think that with that, like, I think that arc could have worked. I think also there was an implementation problem with that last season. Like the idea of somebody who's tragic, they can't escape their tragic flaw. Like that's a compelling storytelling trait. So the idea that he could have escaped it, but he was too weak and he was pulled back, like that could work. It just happened like that without any rationale or any.
I don't think it didn't feel right. So here's a question from the chat. Tanya asks, what do you think the effect of Hollywood buying into the idea of the monomyth has been, especially in relation to movies becoming franchises?
How has Hollywood bought into the idea of the monomyth?
That's a question right back at you, Tanya, that you'll have to put in the chat for Ryan.
Yeah, no, I don't quite understand it because I don't know that Hollywood executives sit in boardrooms with, Joseph Campbell's story circle and try to plot that out. What do you think the effect of the Hollywood buying the monomyth has been? I mean, if you're talking about storytellers, I don't think there's buying into the monomyth. I think there's just telling a story. There's a reason that monomyth exists. You can try to say, oh, well, this is deconstructing that, like Pulp Fiction, but it's not, because each segment in Pulp Fiction is still telling that same thing, which basically boils down to a character wants something and they suffer the consequences for getting it. It's always about an inverse of what we expect to happen.
And I think the myths teach us something. You were sort of alluding to it before. Myths teach us something about the world. And I didn't realize how strong an effect that was until I started learning another language, a European language, and started listening to fairy tales in those other languages, because the amount of repetition in fairy tales, the amount of things that you're telling children tell you something quite like basic about that language, but also about people that crosses cultures. It's really easy to like start to learn and listen to a language when you use fairy tales to do it, because you know those fairy tales already, like from your own childhood, and they're really kind of they're really repetitive in the way they tell those stories, but not in a boring way, just in a this is what they are.
Well, a lot of those stories are lessons for children. And, like teaching a child a lesson is like teaching a dog. You have to just be repetitive and say it over and over. I mean, you can go back to like the first, like the creation story. And I always thought that as a metaphor for children. I mean, you have a toddler, they run around the house naked, then they get older, they realize they're naked, they want covered. Adam and Eve goes through the same thing after eating from the tree of knowledge, which is a symbol for growing up in real life, and you lose that Eden of your childhood. I don't know why people take that so literally. It's pretty clearly like a universal story that applies to all humans, but that's always been my take on it.
Yeah.
100%.
Tanya says they see a formulaic approach taken in modern franchise movies. So maybe they are sitting reading Campbell's work and like drawing from it. I did actually or Sid Field's had a screenplay book. I mean, because there is like an act structure to movies that works really well. But there's nuances in that act structure that I'm sorry to have to cut you off. Like if you read a book like How to Write a Screenplay, it'll tell you big scene in the first 10 pages, an act break at minute 30, or at page 30. Those are all like flexible things, but there's certain aspects of movie storytelling. Like my wife's at Yale right now, and she just learned that the climax of a movie, like the first scene, the first conflict of a movie is always the baby of the big climax at the end. And I'll give you an example. Romeo and Juliet, like the first climax is when they meet and it ends with them meeting in death. Or Predator Badlands begins with a fight between the Predator and his brother, but it ends with a bigger fight between the Predator and his dad. Once you know it, like you start to notice it in every single popular movie ever. So yeah, there's certain things that always get revisited just because of structure reasons in films and TV. And I do know for a fact that the Last of Us video game did actually use the hero's journey, because I was at the V&A in Dundee and it was their video games exhibition. Yay! Their video games exhibition. And The Last of Us was one of the video games that they were showing you the development of. And they literally had a grid that mapped out the hero's journey and mapped out the whole narrative arc of the game. It was really cool. That's a nice sneak peek behind. Okay.
I think as well, I guess, if people are influenced by anything, if you've got movies that use a particular structure, then even if you don't know the source of that structure, if you're influenced by that movie, then you'll it'll be a diluted
Oh, yeah.
form of kind of
Oh,
repetition anyway. So it might not be a conscious thing. It might just because there is always that thing of them of like executives trying to recapture something that was successful. So that did well. Let's do another one of those to make more money. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Ghostbusters is my favorite example there, because Ghostbusters started because Dan Aykroyd's family was super into occult stuff, and he, you know, went from this SNL background and wanted to do a slobs versus snobs movie where they're exterminators in the future. And it was just like these guys, you know, goofing off and doing their thing, and it was a totally original thing. And those new Ghostbusters movies, which are awful, are just nostalgia for the old movies. And they're not really adding in anything cool or different to that. And Star Wars has kind of done the same thing. My favorite Star Wars stuff now is when people draw from different things that are awesome. Like if I could go back in time and tell them, hey, you're going to remake Episode 7, I would say there should be no New Republic. They've had a really hard time putting the government back together. And the Roman Empire just fell. What came after the fall of the Roman Empire? The Middle Ages, the Dark Ages. You should be in a period where everything's really hard to put together, and your guiding light style-wise is medieval imagery. I thought that's what they were doing from the first trailer, because like you have the crossguard hilt, you have castles, tunics, like the design seemed more medieval, and then they just did the Empire again.
Yeah, I find that quite disappointing.
Yeah, we've ran at length about our sequel trilogy in previous streams.
Like, oh, we're going to complain about the sequel trilogy? That's original. Let's go for it.
Yeah. So
never done that before.
So Mr. Mike is a regular visitor in the comments, but Mr. Mike, I didn't brief Ryan on the fact you always ask a question about Horus Heresy. On a scale of Ryan to Screencrush to Arey, how much of the Horus Heresy is trying to write genuinely amazing stories, and how much of it is just pumping out books because Games Workshop wants that tasty money? I'm not sure Ryan's going to be able to answer that, but it
what
did
the hell is
strike me.
Horus Heresy?
Horus Heresy is
Correct response.
yeah, exactly. We'll just leave it at that. Horus Heresy is a new. You can explain, Andy.
Yeah. So, Games Workshop, Warhammer, like their science fiction game Warhammer 40,000, set in the year 40,000.
We did an ad for that, yeah.
Was very big, very popular, and in the background of that game, 10,000 years earlier, in the year 30,000, there had been rebellion. So the Emperor of Mankind had his legions of Space Marines, who were these like, you know, super giant, you know, warriors spreading his slightly fascistic vision across the universe. But then there was a big rebellion where like one of his primarchs, one of his sort of children turned, and then half the legions kind of turned. There was a big civil war. And then the game is set, again, to use similar metaphors before, in the Dark Ages, kind of like following that. But then in more recent times, Games Workshop have revisited that, what was in the history. So they've gone back to what was backstory for their game and turned that also into a game and a big series of novels and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to back up for a second, Primark isn't just a store?
No.
I had no idea. Okay. All right.
To be fair, it's spelled differently. Primark, the store, is with a K, and this is Primark with a CH.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I had no idea. No,
Yeah. So, Mr. Mike, you're not going to get an answer to this question, but partially because I think we do need to coin a phrase. If Big Shoe are going to come after us if we criticise shoes, I think Big Mini are going to come after us if we criticise Games Workshop. So that's my new phrase for Games Workshop, is Big Mini.
Big Mini. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'll give Mike this. I'll give him a voicemail from Kermit the Frog if you want to clip this sound out. Hey, Mike can't come to the phone right now, but that's bad. Hang on. Mike can't come to the phone right now, so leave a message after the beep. There, you can have that. That's yours.
Thank you.
Love it.
Welcome.
Again, from the comments still loading, what are your individual thoughts on how to use pacing in films?
Depends on the film. I mean, the rule of pacing, again, we're talking about earlier, brought up structure. They'll do the same thing over and over. Every story does. You always have a scene where somebody ends up and the next scene they end down. Like you kind of, if it doesn't have that, it feels off. And if you're doing your job right, then it's not predictable. But typically that's the structure of it. But then pacing is more, you can have a 10-minute scene that feels short. You can have a short scene that feels long. Like that episode of The Sopranos where Ralphie dies, I thought was 2 episodes. I remembered it as 2 episodes. I was shocked to go back and find that it was 1 because it felt like so much happened in the space of 50 minutes. Yeah, it just depends on the film.
Yeah,
It's
I
definitely something I found like recently that it's what I find disappointing in a lot of films, like even otherwise good films. So like, oh my god, my mind's gone blank. Leonardo DiCaprio film, One Battle After Another. Like I really enjoyed that film, but to me, like the first act is just too long, because it's setting up all the backstory for the rest of it, but it almost takes half of the runtime before you actually get to what the film's about. And it annoyed it distracted me while I was watching it, and that might have been because of prior knowledge from having watched the trailer. But I was watching it, going, "This isn't the film,
Right.
This isn't the." And if it had just surprised me and had gone somewhere, I'd have gone, "Oh, that wasn't the film I was expecting." But then it turned out that the second half was the film I was expecting. It just took a lot longer to get there than I was expecting. That might be.
I thought that
personal,
first act, just you talk about pacing, was so fast. Like for me, it flew by.
Interesting. I mean, that is, I guess, part of the problem as well. And be a personal thing, how engaged you are in a moment. So, yeah.
I'm going to ask, because I've asked every guest and every person I know recently, have you seen the cinematic trailer for The Odyssey? Has anyone seen it yet?
In the theater?
In the theater, yeah. The
no.
one that's just one scene long. So it's not your traditional trailer.
I don't think I have. No, I have not seen that.
I think it's like one of the best trailers that's ever been made, just because it's one scene and it's different from other trailers. But the pacing in it, like I was literally on the edge of my seat, and I wasn't really that fussed about The Odyssey. I was like, maybe I'll go and see it. And I watched that trailer and I was just like, I have to see this film. But the pacing in it and the tension that they build in that one scene is really, I thought it was really quite special. But no one else has seen it. I feel like, was I just imagining this? Andy's in the comments. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Just because I'm so obsessed with ancient Greece.
Where's the movie at? We've got it's back here. Yeah, it's like this. The Mandela effect of the Sinbad.
Oh yeah. And Mr. Mike says thank you. That does make up for the lack of answer.
You're welcome.
Glad to be of service.
I could have done Yoda too. It's the two impressions I can do. Just Frank Oz and Jim Henson characters.
Okay. Right. Shady Elf asks, what's the biggest myth about how franchise decisions get made? Is there something audiences regularly misunderstand?
I mean, I've never been behind the scenes of that. I would say you should never forget that there's a human element in people whose jobs depend on looking like they're doing something. Okay, so I haven't caught up on this new Star Trek show, right? I started watching the first episode and I fell asleep. And on our Screencrush Discord, people are talking about it. I'm like, I got to watch that show. But what I hear about it, let me back up. What I keep thinking is, why did they make this show instead of Terry Metalis' Star Trek spinoff he wanted to do? He did this landmark Picard season 3. He set up a spinoff. It's exactly what fans want, but Terry's not the kind of guy who's out there to give fan service. He's there to tell stories because he's also a fan. You know, it's the best Star Trek writers are typically people who like Star Trek. Like the Enterprise season 3 and 4 prove that. Anyways, why did they make this show instead? And I think it's a mix of things. I think Kurtzman is controlling the Star Trek universe, set them on this path. They have decided, yeah, we want to do this stuff in the year 3000, whatever it is. We want to do this. And they've just set their mind to it. And maybe Terry campaigning for it didn't do him any favors. I just think that they set a path and they've decided that we're tripling down on this. And I don't know what his reason for that is, but remember, it's human beings doing this. But then you also have like that Michelle Yeoh Section 31 movie, right? Which I hear is terrible and I haven't seen yet. That was supposed to be a spinoff, but then she won an Oscar, but they still had her under contract. So there's all these things in there that are actual, like, you know, we talked about Game of Thrones last season. Read the book, read the oral history of Game of Thrones, that book, and that Dan and Dave talk about. We could not have made another episode in there. The logistics were staggering. I'm going to push back and say maybe don't film The Long Night actually overnight and make it a little bit easier and do a traditional production schedule. But point is, there's just a human element that we act like doesn't exist because we think these are just like things that can be dreamed up out of nowhere, especially when it comes to Avengers movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, like, because humans favor a simplistic narrative, like we love the idea of the auteur or like of the singular creator. So we focus on the director or maybe the writer, but there's always a team. There's always multiple voices kind of influencing that. And on the Game of Thrones one, I don't know, Ryan, if you ever listened to Brett Goldstein's Films to be Buried With podcast.
No.
I highly recommend. You know Brett Goldstein, like Ted Lasso and Shrinking.
Yeah.
So he's been doing this. He was a stand-up in Britain before he kind of went over to America and became a writer. But he been doing this podcast for a long time. He gets a guest on and he just talks about films. He's got a format. The idea is that they've died, and then people in heaven are kind of asking you questions about films. But one of the guests he had on, and I forget the name of the writer, but it was a guy who was like essentially Dan and Dave's like assistant, and he became, by the last 2 seasons, he was the lead writer, like in the writers' room. And it was really interesting because on this, again, not much like you, I don't generally like shitting on creatives, but I'm going to make an exception. Because a lot of what he spoke about, like he spoke about his perfect film, he said was Casablanca, and I agree with like everything he said. It is a perfect script, like all good. But then there was an answer to one of the questions where he started talking about, in his opinion, you didn't need a lot of the connective tissue and scenes that films often had, that you could just cut from essentially action scene to action scene. You didn't need to bridge the gap in between. And when I thought about,
that's a terrible take.
Yeah, and he was saying
that's
that,
awful.
About what is one of the key criticisms of that last season? It's they just, the army's over here and now they're over here, and there's not even anything to indicate that maybe 3 months have passed.
If your first name is George and your last name's Miller and you're making a movie called Fury Road, that might be true. But other than that, no. And you know what? I realized I gave kind of a convoluted answer last time. So I want to answer this question a little bit more directly because I want to give you guys a good soundbite here. What is something that audiences regularly misunderstand? People who make movies and shows know when they suck. The executives know when they're going to suck. They know it ahead of time. They're all like that guy in front of the steamroller in Austin Powers yelling, "No!" But it's such a big train, they cannot veer it off the track. And sometimes they don't know when it's good. That's the scary thing. Like they all, like when I'm used to theater people, and theater people are really nice to each other. Movie people aren't. Like when they get in a room, they'll be like, "Oh my God, that was terrible." They love ripping shit down because they know when it's bad. However, like Robert Zemeckis, when he was talking, there's this famous story that Tom Hanks tells about, so, Bob, what are we doing here? And Bob's like, "I don't even know. Like, this could be a total bag of shit. We have no idea," is how Tom Hanks tells it. Sometimes they don't even know when they sit on a hit. They're just out there making the best thing they can with the skills they have at that point. And sometimes they align. But for the most part, when they make shit, they know it's shit. In fact, but I know people who thought something was going to be shit and it was amazing. Gene Hackman hated Hoosiers. Go figure. While they were making it.
So Shady Elf asks, do you think the renaissance of TV series as an art form has been good for creators, for consumers, for corporations?
Well, not for corporations, because this is an interesting thing, the renaissance of TV series, because we all agree, this started with The Sopranos in the late 90s, and it kicked off this golden age era of peak TV. Streaming wasn't really a part of that. The biggest shows on streaming are always shows that were made by networks that, went through a traditional pilot structure and did 22 episode seasons or 13 episodes for a drama. Breaking Bad, The Office, Friends. These are the movies that were made by traditional TV that do well on streaming. But we tend to think of like the era of streaming as this powerhouse of TV because like the budgets are bigger and it looks cinematic. But tell me the truth. I mean, which is better, the less cinematic looking Star Trek The Next Generation or the best season of Star Trek Discovery? So I don't think that what's going on right now is necessarily this era of peak TV. And I definitely think what's going on now isn't good for corporations because media companies are acting like tech companies, investing way too much money into, say, streaming without a guaranteed profit line just because they're trying to stake out a branch of this tech industry. It's the same thing like Grubhub does, et cetera. As far as for consumers, hell yeah, man, more options is great for consumers, especially in the early days of something tech-wise, because that's when prices are dirt low. What sucks is when some of the competition has been weeded out and they jack up the prices, which we're starting to see with streaming now, where people are going, "Oh, it's basically cable." Like, yeah, I will credit myself to this. 15 years ago, I said this is just going to turn into cable again as soon as the second streaming network was introduced. But has it been good for creators? What's going on now? Not so much, because what's happened is when you have fewer episodes a season, you have a much smaller writer's room. So when you do like 8 episodes, the $20 million budget each, you don't need to hire as big of a writer's room, right? Like I think Andor, Tony Gilroy only had like 3 people working on it. But in a traditional writer's room, what you would have is a staff of like 13 people total. And some of those people are like the people who've been with the showrunner for years. Some are mid-level writers, and then some of these entry people. Those entry people need those jobs. These are the people who were a writer's assistant on their last gig. This is how they come up in the industry, but that was the first thing to get axed. So essentially, it's sort of like when Scar took over the Pride Lands and there was no grass for the antelope to eat and everybody went hungry. That's what's going to happen in Hollywood. So yeah, I think it's been good for consumers and bad for corporations and creators.
Yeah, I think the early days of streaming were really exciting as a consumer, and now it's even worse. I feel like for people that like we didn't have cable in the same way, because like I wasn't used to having to pay for everything and getting adverts on everything. Like it's actually worse. It's like the enshittification of my televisual experience, and it's outrageous. Okay.
I agree. And having options to everything all the time doesn't necessarily make for a pleasant viewing experience, because you feel so overwhelmed, you don't know what to watch.
Yeah. I've actually been really happy this past week or 2 weeks, because all I've been watching is the Winter Olympics. So, hey.
Yeah, there've been some great ones, man.
Yeah.
Who knew I liked curling so much?
Well, actually, I was actually going to say, like, you're quite lucky to catch us, because curling is on right now, or it was on when we started, and they're like the only all Scottish team that you'll ever see in something international. So I'm desperate
you guys
to
won
find
gold
out
in the
what
80s,
happened.
right? And you're still talking about it.
Yeah, we're still talking about it. I think the women won gold more recently. The women maybe won gold last time, but the men haven't won gold for a while. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
My favorite thing has been that, I don't know if you've seen the video of Flavor Flav doing the bobsleigh.
Oh, I haven't. No,
it's brilliant. Absolute cinema.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
My favorite is Clabo running uphill, because now I'm just like, I'm going to use that for every time I say someone running to the comments, like Clabo running up a hill. It's just like the perfect meme of him. He's on skis when he's running, but he's got insane talent.
Oh yeah, the women's downhill skiing was amazing. Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, we're not.
Yeah. We've got sidetracked by Olympics. So Zoltan asks, is nostalgia a creative crutch?
Yeah, it can be. Like Ghostbusters Afterlife. I'll use an example there. Like that movie, whenever it was Egon's ghost talking to his granddaughter, I was like, oh, wait. You know what I mean? Like that's a lamp that's moving. That's not Egon. So I do think that there's like narrative shortcuts that some people will take in order to get to our feels faster. Yeah, if you want to know everything about nostalgia, you need to watch the Mad Men episode, The Carousel, where Don Draper talks about nostalgia, and he's doing this presentation of a slide projector, and he says nostalgia is delicate but potent, and it literally comes from a Greek word meaning an old wound that is yet to heal. So that's when I talked earlier about the monomyth and stuff. The reason that resonates is because it's a universal emotion that we can all connect with, right? So is nostalgia, but I do think it's a creative crutch that studios lean on so much. I don't know if individual creators lean on it that much, but it depends on the creator, I guess.
Yeah.
The thing I always think of with nostalgia is the Adrian Veidt adverts from Watchmen.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Ozymandias' nostalgia kind of perfume thing, and which
was replaced by Millennium.
Yeah.
By Veidt. Yeah. And by the way, I don't know why every podcast and everything in existence doesn't talk about Watchmen 2019. Like that we don't deserve that show. That remains like, I don't think there's ever been a better adaptation in the age of superhero stuff. I don't think there's anything better. Like that just stands out to me. I think about that all the effing time. That is constantly living in my head.
I'm slightly freaked out that you said it was 2019. I didn't realize it was that long ago, but I absolutely agree with you. Yeah.
That was the year I started full-time Screencrush. So that's why, like full-time, like that was my gig. And then I wasn't actually. The pandemic put a hold on that. But anyways, that's boring stuff. Yeah.
And that show was fucking amazing. One season of pure brilliance. It was amazing. Yeah. I feel like I think about it sometimes too, because I found watching it was so like brutal and raw and uncompromising with what they were showing you about race, and it just really, it really affected me at the time. I might have to go back and watch it again.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm about to. Not even for work, but just for fun.
Just cause, yeah.
I'll throw. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to go back to what you said before, like I was totally surprised, like the Indiana Jones time travel thing. Like I had no idea what to expect episode to episode. It constantly was wrong footing me, but in a really good way. So
yeah, we worked out the Dr. Manhattan twist. It's the only thing of that we got remotely right. I will say this too. If we're talking about nostalgia, the first 2 seasons of Cobra Kai are probably the best deconstruction about nostalgia I've ever seen. Because the whole reason why Johnny Lawrence restarts Cobra Kai is he's trying to relive his glory days. But what happens is it just empowers young men to be terrible because they take this message that made him feel awesome and then they bring it out into the world. It was a perfect metaphor for what can happen and sometimes in political movements, where this like yearning for days of yore can actually empower violence in the modern day.
I haven't
After
seen
that, not as good, but
I haven't seen Karate Kid either.
Yeah, you don't need to. I mean, you could probably watch Cobra Kai without seeing it, but those first 2 seasons really surprised me. We did one video comparing it to the nostalgia of The Force Awakens. Nobody watched it. I hate that. I hate when I make a video. I'm like, this is good. This is like some philosophical stuff. This has got everything I like to see in a video. You watched it?
I watched it. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. You were the one.
Sorry.
Yeah. You were the one.
Well, I really like. I watch all your Easter egg ones as well, but I really like it when you do the ones where you go a bit deeper. The kind of the more. As an English literature graduate, an English teacher, I love the deeper you go with the analysis, the more into it. So yeah.
Yeah, those are my favorite to make.
And actually, there is a question about this. Is there a video or a series you'd like to make, but the YouTubes aren't there, so you haven't made it?
I want to make that T-shirt, Master of Sock Puppets. I completely talked over you, Lindsay. I'm sorry.
No, it's
Have
fine.
you ever fallen foul of this? Is there a video or series you'd like to make, but the YouTube views aren't? Yeah, all the time. Anything with Star and Trek in it. I mean, that's because of the people watching, but that the Star Trek thing is also because the people on our staff haven't necessarily seen Star Trek, so I'd have to work a lot harder on the scripts, which I don't have time to do. For All Mankind's my favorite show on TV. I think The Pit is a masterpiece. We're not going to make those videos because they're not going to get views. You know, when you have like a team our size and you have the amount of like resources devoted to putting something out, you really have to consider those things. Now, what we will do though is sometimes we'll do like, okay, Sinners came out, let's do an ending explained. It did well. Let's do a really long breakdown because we love this movie. Or we did something recently, we're doing more anime stuff. And some of those like hit really big, and others we had one that just now hit 10,000 views that came out like a few weeks ago. So sometimes we do like 9 for them, 1 for us.
Sinners is a great movie. The other day, someone was talking about it at my work the other day, and they were like, "Oh, it's a really fun action movie," and I'm like, "I did we watch the same?"
When did they walk out? Did they go to the bathroom?
I don't know. And I was like, no, that's not what it's about. And they were like, no.
When did they walk in? Like, did they
miss
the first hour?
Yeah, that's true.
And then I proceeded to talk like at my poor team, about like the intersection of race and class and how people use like class division or race division to like basically break apart workers and then the person was like, no, it was just a really fun movie. I don't know what she's talking about.
Isn't that interesting though? People will get like, I know people who loved Rise of Skywalker because like it was the best one. The Emperor was in it. Like it's just, you can approach it with completely different ideas. Again, I want to quote Jason Pargin here. He said in a video, the reason Sinners works and like Nightmare on Elm Street and some of these other films like that is because if you didn't have the horror story in it, you'd still be interested in what happens to these characters trying to start a juke joint. And that's what separates like great horror genre films from Slumber Party Massacre 2.
Yeah. And that sequence, the one that everybody talks about, the music sequence where the people from the past and the future, like I would like literally breathless watching that in the cinema. Like I forgot to breathe. I was so hooked into it. I started wheezing. I had to get my inhaler out because it hit me so much in the cinema. Like it was that happens in theater. We were before the stream, Mary and I were talking about theater. That happens to me quite often if I'm watching a really good play. Never happens with a film, but it did with that one. So yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, no, they didn't just say it was a fun action movie. They said it was a fun action movie that was also a musical. That's what they said.
That is an interesting take. But to give a more direct answer to this, I would like to cover more Star Trek.
And here's something.
Is it just like, is it beyond the kind of workload? Like, because obviously there is in the Discord, like there is a Star Trek section, but
yeah.
Is there not as much interest in it, or are other people doing it?
The major hurdle is logistics with the team. I think I would be more willing. Like, okay, for instance, we're not going to cover Monarch season 2 this year. We covered season 1. The writer who worked on it isn't with us anymore. We could still pay her freelance to do it, but she's not like a team member. But it's mostly because we looked at the calendar and went, look, we're going to be covering in April and May all these other shows. Monarch didn't perform as high as we would have liked, even though I think this season will be good. It's going to have Godzilla and Kong and all this other stuff, but we had to pick and choose. We're just not able to put the time and logistics into that. It really does boil down to that. And also just like I said in the script writing, like I would talk about For All Mankind all day. I love that show, but doesn't mean that I get to talk about it on the YouTube channel. But then sometimes like Severance, we got to cover that. So,
and I suppose you can always later on, potentially do like a single one just for you.
Yeah, and we're going to do like, For All Mankind is in a different timeline. So we're going to do like all the differences in the timeline video ahead of time. And if that one does really well, then we can talk. But that's really tough for us to cover it.
I will share it everywhere.
Here's a couple of quick fire questions. So Zoltan asks, what recent project surprised you by balancing Mandate and Muse successfully, perhaps in a way you didn't expect it to?
Oh, that's a great question. What have I seen recently? Mandate and Muse. Things really, I'm always like on what do we do last week? We made videos about Dr. Doom.
Yeah. While you're thinking, I'm going to throw out Wonder Man out there.
Oh, Wonder Man.
Yeah.
Great.
I
don't know how much of a mandate they had, but yeah, I did love that.
Well, in terms of like it had to, like I suspect, given how damage control are going to feature in future MCU, I suspect there was a fair degree of control over what they had to do with damage control, but I could be wrong. But yeah.
No, yeah, Wonder Man's a great example. I love that show. Why they put it out in one day, I don't understand. I think that would have really sustained a weekly watch. Yeah, Wonder Man's a great example.
What was particularly nice with that was again talking to the kids in the club at school yesterday. They really enjoyed it as well, which I wasn't expecting. I thought they might have found it a little slow, but they loved it too. So yeah.
I guess I'll go with Wonder. I mean, Ironheart's another example. I thought, they're going to do a spinoff with Riri Williams, but that also like introduced some really cool stories about grief and also AI and like what makes a person. And there's this whole thing where people like are reconstructing their loved ones is a real thing. Like with LLMs, like that's a big thing that's happening right now. Yeah. And that show, I think they had a lot to say with that too.
Yeah. Did you watch Black Mirror, Ryan?
Oh yeah, it's a great episode with Dom Hall Gleason. Yeah.
Yeah. And Zoltan,
it's eerily prescient.
Yeah. And then ask one franchise that lost its soul and one that has found new life.
I think the MCU really lost its way because it had such a focus on putting out more stuff for Disney Plus. So many hours to the point where it became content and it wasn't storytelling. I think a lot of those things they did were just half baked and could have been great. And one that has found new, I mean, I do think the MCU is I'll say the MCU because they're definitely on a rebound. I thought the Thunderbolts was great. Fantastic Four didn't hold up for me as much on a rewatch. I was disappointed by that. But again, we'll see what happens with Doomsday. That's
Game of Thrones would be another good one. I think the Hedge Knight is.
That's a great
fantastic.
one, yeah. Night of Seven Kingdoms. Wait till you guys see episode 6. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Fantastic Four was interesting but I felt it was like quite one note. It just like went on one tenor of kind of pulling on your heartstrings with regard to family, the mother being the protector at the end, and I really wanted to like it much more than I did.
Well, they didn't suffer any consequences for any of their decisions. The world didn't present them with any real challenges. Although we were talking about story beats earlier that you see in movies, they didn't have them. It's almost like Matt Shackman had such reverence for the Fantastic Four, he dared not put them in danger. I don't know. Could have been better. It's a decent first film for the franchise. I hope they get a different direction for the next one.
And I feel like personally bad for what I'm about to say. But also one of the criticisms of a lot of the MCU films is that they're being very similar, like tonally, like they've all tried to go for that Iron Man quippy tone. This one obviously didn't, but I could have done with a bit more quipping in it,
especially from Johnny Storm.
Yeah,
and there's certain mainstays of the Fantastic Four. I don't know if sometimes, like we talked about fan reaction earlier, I think they're just overreacting to what's come before. Like, why weren't John and Ben and Johnny fighting with each other more? You know, why wasn't Ben brooding more about being the Thing? There's just certain things about those comics, especially in the early days, that they were adapting where that was an important part of it. Reed's guilt, like it's all touched on, but it's more like, for me, because I already know about this, they didn't feel like characters to me.
I actually think they didn't explain enough as well. So there's one scene, and I didn't read those comics when I was a kid. Fantastic Four is like not an IP that I'm that close to. So there's one scene where Ben is like walking along the street, and there's a synagogue, right? And he's walking, and the woman's there, and she goes into this. Now, I didn't know he was Jewish, so for a moment I was like, is he anti-Semitic? Like, why did he just turn away? Like,
no, that's actually Ben Grimm was always like a self-insert for Jack Kirby. He was very much like based on Jack Kirby created the Fantastic Four. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna like Stan Lee didn't do a damn thing with that. They were clearly based on his Challengers of the Unknown he did for DC. All Stan Lee did was add dialogue and steal the Silver Surfer from him. Like, though they were created by Jack Kirby and only Jack Kirby. The fact that Stan Lee takes co-credit for that blows my mind. But anyways, that was always a stand-in for him, and he wasn't. You know, he like. Kirby grew up on Yancey Street. There's a whole thing there. And they didn't canonically say he was Jewish until 2007-ish in a comic. Somebody dies and he recites like a Jewish prayer over them, which is really sweet. I liked that they did that.
But it just completely took me by, because I didn't have any of that context or that background, and I think a lot of people would have come to that film like me without knowing that, and it just really took me off guard. But then
you thought Ben was going to smash the synagogue?
I just didn't understand why he had turned away when it turned out the woman that he liked was Jewish. I was just like, what's wrong with this guy? Like, I know anti-Semitism's like got rife, but it's not that. Like, no, what?
Well, and that's the other thing too. That movie presented this utopia 1960s, and I was like, I don't know. I kind of feel like they should have been trying to form the Future Foundation while Galactus was attacking. That to me sounds really freaking interesting. Like, how will your fragile world peace? You know, I don't know. Like, there's 100 stories in that movie that they just kind of didn't do, and it was a lot of montages and you know, so it's like a really good outline for a Fantastic Four movie, but with no characters in it.
We've got time for one last question, and this is like turning it back on you. So how much do you think you influence creators? So does the weekly churn of online fan analysis change how studios tell stories? Are creators writing for you, the theory machine, now?
I have way too much influence, and I know a friend of mine, Philip Molina, said this at a live show of ours. Somebody asked the same question to the creators, you know, listen. And he told me that he knows a writer at Marvel, and they were like, they absolutely will watch and listen. And I don't mean that like I can throw out a Dr. Doom theory that's going to make the Russo brothers change the trajectory of their movie, but what they are listening for, how we react to it and the things that we respond to. We're like a giant test audience, because we'll make our videos and then they get to read the comments and see what people think. They shouldn't do that. I don't think that I should have any say in anything they ever do. Like, let creatives be creatives and artists and tell their stories. And I kind of think the Fantastic Four, to pick on it again, catered too much to what they thought fans wanted to see, instead of putting your characters in dangerous situations they wouldn't escape.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Not that I don't have ideas I wish they would do, but that's okay.
Yeah. But maybe they don't pick the ones you'd actually want them to use.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Particularly if they're reading the comments as well. Like, that's a very dangerous road to go down. But
Never read the comments. Well, thank you so much. That brings us to the end almost of our hour. Thank you, as always, to our Patreons. And thank you, Ryan, for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure to have you and to hear some of your views. We will be back next week, as always, with Inside the Rookery. The season continues. And until then, all that remains for me to say is thank you, as always. I think I've said it already, but we always say thank you twice, apparently, to our patrons who keep our streams beautifully ad-free. Thanks to everyone on the Discord server, as always. And thanks to everyone who came and popped in comments and questions. It was great to spend Saturday night when I could have been watching curling with you all. Until the next time, thanks. All that remains to say is good night and caw-caw, caw-caw. See you soon.